It's the 1740s and Italy is going through reforms. The Enlightenment is in full swing. Tuscany is about to become the hotbed of absolutism, and it was in the city of Lucca that in 1743 Ridolfo Luigi Boccherini was born. And I telling you, when Lil Big got on the game of life, he made sure to keep a smile on his face, manifesting positivity and optimism in everything he did. His dad taught him cello when he was 5. 4 years later, he got private classes, and by the time he was 13, he was sent to Rome to study music. Boccherini was a prudent guy. He'd work his ass off, pay his taxes, wash his hands before dinner, pray to the right God and all. He wouldn't go around and chase cattle. He was just a straightforward, perfect gentleman that didn't have that much of a crazy life. He was the third of 6 children, and with exception of his elder brother who died at age 3, they all had artistic aptitudes. His sister Maria Esther, for example, grew up to be a renowned ballerina. But Boccherini would take it to the next level by becoming one of the greatest composers of all time. His dad was so satisfied with his mastery that he grabbed him and 2 of his siblings and went on a tour through the Austrian Empire, the first of many. They performed to the court and public of Vienna. The young man would publish his first work, got praised by one of the greatest opera composers of all time, and went on developing a bright future and having the time of his life. He would continue to tour around Austria, occasionally get back to Lucca to work as a violoncellist, and make little trips all over Italy to perform on his own, all the while increasing his catalog of compositions quicker than a traveling bullet on D-Day. At age 24, his dad died, and Boccherini dealt with the grief in just about the most appropriate way possible, by touring in the north of Italy with his friends, and forming what's probably the first quartet formation in history. One of these friends then accompanied Boccherini to Paris, where the reception by the public was great, but the press reviews were a little blasé. So his expectations were not met, which might have led him to change his future plans of going to England. That, or maybe he just wanted to go after a soprano singer he was infatuated with, get into her opera company and eventually marry her, just the usual. So off to Spain he was, never to come back again. He adopted the country dearly into his heart, built a family and composed most of his works there. It was around this time that he became a violoncellist in the private orchestra of Louis of Spain, the half-brother of the King of Spain. He quickly became a composer of Louis' personal chamber. So Boccherini was on the fence between traditional servilism and the new prospects of free professionalism that were rising up at the time. But hey, he has a wife now and a family that's getting bigger. Life among Louis was spent following him around the royal palaces, delighting everybody with the genius of his own creations. Once Louis settled in the newly restored Palace of Boadilla, the whole place became a safe haven for art and exuberance. Clementina would conceive their first children, and the composer would conceive one of the greatest pieces of classical music, the string quintet with 2 violoncellos. Now our pal Louis had a lot of ambition. Being a patron of the arts wasn't enough for him. When his half-brother died, he tried to claim the throne, but he lost it to his brother Charles, who eventually exiled him far away from Madrid, just so he couldn't try to do anything funny. Boccherini joined the exile and enjoyed a life of prosperity and welfare. He had 7 children, one of which died, began saving money, doing investments, and composing as much as ever. This would give him financial stability to deal with the harsh reality of losing his wife due to a stroke, and just a few months later losing his job due to his boss' death. maybe getting back to his roots and making a living out of just publishing his works wasn't the best of the ideas, since now he had a family to raise. But either way, it seems like whoever wrote his life decided to throw some plot conveniences on his way. First he got an annual pension from the royal chapel, then he got into the service of some guy, until finally he was appointed as a composer for the personal chamber of none other than the King of Prussia. Which means that now most of his revenue is made from dispatching scores through France to Prussia. Something he couldn't do for a while once those pesky revolutions started happening. But as always, things would get back to normal and his financial situation would remain stable. The now 38 years old composer remarried, wrote his first and only stage work, and harmony was re-established in the Boccherini household, at least for a while. During the next decade, his musical catalog would prosper in diversity. Quintets and quartets were his jam, but he wouldn't neglect Frederick's preference for chamber music. The master would challenge himself by creating more complex compositions, such as sextets, octets, symphonies, orchestral minuets, and much more. This is when the always optimistic composer would face the most difficult period of his life. On May of 1796, his daughter died. 1 year later, when Frederick died, his successor, Frederick, wasn't really into music, so Boccherini lost his job. Around the same time, some dude with an affinity for guitars inherited a fortune from his dad and hired Boccherini to compose quality music for him, which ended up in the creation of some popular pieces, but that fortune quickly went away and the commissions stopped. Then there was a possibility that Boccherini would write scores and send it to a French guy for publication. But even though that guy is the one that came up with the idea, he ghosted him and never wrote back. He would then try to reach out to another French guy for publication, but they never made a deal. The master signed his third will and embraced the fact his life was coming to an end. When Lucien Bonaparte became sort of a diplomat in Spain, Boccherini wrote some musicals for him, but this only lasted 11 months, which sucks. Time has been ruthless, and joy is fading away. But the master would go out of his way to deliver the same energy he always had. His sons moved out, he lost another daughter. The sorrows were kept deep inside, and on his last compositions he deposited his remaining excitements and vitality. He lost Isabel, he lost Teresa, and 6 months later he lost his wife. Engulfed with grief and loneliness, the 62 years old master from Lucca died. But he will live through every single one of his creations and through the impact that they have in those that come in contact with them.